Hello everyone and welcome to the ZDI News Roundup. I know we haven't done this in a while, but I wanted to pick up the slack on this because we don't really talk about news on the podcast, so I figured that we'd talk about it in a special video. Well, not really special, there's nothing special about me. But I'd really like to talk about some of the news that's hit this past week, the week of the 23rd to the 29th, and we'll just kind of dive right into it. So one of the first things we got for this week was the fact that Breath of the Wild was the second best-selling launch game in March. It's following directly Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands, and preceded by Mass Effect Andromeda, and then, of course, Horizon Zero Dawn, and then to a lesser extent, MLB The Show, and then, you know, so on and so forth. This is big news because this was the launch month for The Legend of Zelda. It's obviously seeing a very big push in sales since then, but it was one of the top 20 games, and this is counting physical and digital formats for the publishers across all platforms. Of course, this means for the Wii U and the Switch. Next, we have two messages directed at fans from the top developers of Breath of the Wild. You check that out on our website. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Eiji Aonuma and director Hidemaru Fujibayashi talk about making the game, and they give some more info on that, you know, like we've had in the past. The Nintendo Switch has the biggest launch of hardware since 1995, according to NPD. It had sold 31,000 more units than its previous best-selling console, the Game Boy Advance, in terms of Nintendo. The Switch has roughly sold around 1.3 million units since launch, which is huge. We at Zelda Informer probably attribute that to Breath of the Wild, since that was a huge launch game that a lot of people really wanted to play, obviously. It was the second best-selling game in March. We finally have 100% of the Breath of the Wild speedrun. Clock's in about 49 hours long. If you want to watch that, we have that up on our site. Everything I'm talking about, I'll put the stories down in the links below, so you'll be able to click straight to them. But it's a pretty long one. It's all the side quests, all the shrines, all the collectibles. That's a lot of stuff. We got some information from Tantalus, the people that worked on the Twilight Princess HD game for the Wii U. They were thrilled to work on it, and it took several months for them to convince Nintendo that they could do it. Along with this development, Eiji Aonuma was omnipresent during Twilight Princess HD development, but he never visited Tantalus. So he would sign off on everything in the game. He was omnipresent, but he didn't really go to their developer studio, and he didn't get involved in that extent. Furthermore, they also say that they claim that they had hundreds of ideas for the remaster, but they can't say what those were. We don't know why, but they say they were literally hundreds, and that's the way that it works for any video game you make, on even games that are ostensibly conversions. Our job as developers are just to throw ideas at the publisher or the creators of the original game. So that's what they did. Furthermore, they talk about what was done on their end to update the Twilight Princess to the HD version, taking it from what we saw on the Wii and the GameCube and putting it on the Wii U in an HD format. And we also had another article this week from the great Andy Spiteri, my co-host on the podcast. In it, he talks about why the Legend of Zelda series should move on from Ganon. He gives examples of other bosses that had bigger impact because they had a specific end to them, whereas it seems every time we defeat Ganon, we lessen the impact of his threat. So I'd recommend giving that a read down below. And of course, news that pretty much no one was surprised at, Nintendo will not be holding a live E3 press conference this year. Personally, I'm a little disappointed because I think that they should. And of course, one of the biggest announcements of this week was the sudden arrival of the Nintendo 2DS XL to join the 3DS family of systems. Although, could you really call it a 3DS at this point, considering it's just an updated DS. It's pretty much the exact same thing as a 3DS, just minus the 3D part of it. It has 82% larger screens than the original 2DS, and it's still lightweight, contains just as much power as the new 3DS XL. It has Amiibo functionality, the C-Stick, the ZL, and the ZR buttons, and it can play all 3DS and new 3DS games, and most Nintendo DS games. So pick that up if you want. It comes in two different colors. I think it's orange and white, and then blue and black. So thank you for joining me this week. I know that this isn't a very long video. I just wanted to recap some of the things that happened this week, and then shoot that over to you guys. So anything in the news that really stood out to you, anything you liked, didn't like, leave a message in the comments below. And of course, read all of the articles for yourself so you can form your own opinion, because we like informed opinions on the Zelda Informer podcast, and we like them here too. So again, thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next week.